I give a lot of speeches, and sometimes I get a standing ovation, but rarely at the beginning. So I'd like to humbly thank you very much for that. I was actually asked to give a presentation. I know power corrupts and PowerPoint corrupts absolutely. And I can just say, forget the presentation and we'll all have a cocktail party. Or we can talk for 15 minutes here and then have a cocktail party. So those of you who'd like to just forget the presentation and drink, please raise your hand or something. Okay, in that case, I'm going to talk to you about some serious stuff. And if I could have your attention, I'd be very grateful. I was at Davos this year, and I was at a little dinner with Bill Clinton, and he was describing that if we reduce carbon emissions by 80% in the year 2050, not by 6%, by 80%, it'll take 1,000 years for the planet to cool down, and in the meantime, some bad things will happen. Like you can expect in the next 10 to 20 years, 1.5 billion people to lose half of their water supply. The issue of climate change is no longer an issue of scientific debate or discussion. The scientists have spoken. And there's a bifurcation between those who hold ideology and are not big believers in data and science on the one hand, and those who believe in science on the other. And we have a big problem here in the world. You know, I'm happy to be here in Toronto speaking. It's actually, my house lives in Toronto, but I've been here half a dozen days since Christmas, and I'm delighted to be speaking at this important event. But, and this issue of climate change is not going to fundamentally change my life in my lifetime, but it will my children. And in the hope that the smaller world that these kids inherit is a better one, we need to do something. Now, it's not just about climate change, it's about our atmosphere as well. And the stakes are very, very high. And you all know the data about human health. Now, what I'd like to try and do in the next 15 minutes is to convince you that you're not just part of an effort to improve the atmosphere, to reduce climate change, or to reduce pollution and so on. You're at the heart of an historic movement that's shifting us from an industrial age to something very different. If you look around today and you see our institutions, everything from newspapers to government to our old models to global problem solving, our energy grid, our transportation system, all of these are at various stages of being stalled or frozen or in atrophy or even failing. And that's what I've tried to describe in my new book with Anthony Williams called Macrowikinomics. And I'd like to thank Tridel and the Delzados for showing great wisdom in doing a volume purchase of this book. Because the best way to buy this book is in massive volume. But you look around. I mean, each of these is a chapter of the book. You're all going to get a copy, so I'm actually not in sales mode here. The Industrial Age Corporation, typified by General Motors, America's greatest company, it went bankrupt. The financial system, you know what? The core modus operandi of Wall Street almost brought down capitalism. And it hasn't changed fundamentally. Newspapers are going bankrupt. 70 have gone under in North America. The problem that newspapers solve is no longer a problem. As one youngster said to me, if the news is important, it will find me. Our systems for global problem solving, climate change is a case in point. All these nation states from the industrial age go off to Copenhagen and Cancun, they can't come up with a deal. But meanwhile, there are 20 to 30 million people that are using the internet to organize around this issue, and you're part of them. You're 200 or 300 of them or something. This is the first time in human history when the world is being mobilized and we're all on the same side. We've been mobilized around world wars before, but we were on different sides. And you're not Malcolm Gladwell's slacktivist. You go onto Facebook and go like, or something like that. You're actually doing something about this. Turns out the killer app for the internet may be saving the planet, literally. I mean, go through these institutions. The universities are losing their monopoly on higher education. The smartest kids don't go to lectures. One youngster at Harvard said to me, why would I go to a lecture of 300 people? You know, and the TA is talking about Peter Drucker. I can go online and interact with Peter Drucker and his knowledge base. You know, the lectures, the process whereby the notes of a lecture go to the notes of a student without going through the brains of either. It's the very best model of pedagogy that 18th century technology can provide. Our models of government are stalled. Democracy, young people aren't voting, even though we know they care a lot. All of these are industrial age institutions. Mass production, mass distribution, mass media, mass marketing, mass education. I'm a teacher, I have knowledge, you're a student, you're an empty vessel, you don't. Get ready, here it comes. Yeah. Mass democracy. I'm a politician. Listen to this 30-second negative ad where I attack my opponents around an issue that, as a young person, you could care less about. You go vote for me, and then I'm going to broadcast to you for 4 years, and we get to do it all over again. Now, for each of these institutions that are failing, on the other hand, we have these sparkling new initiatives that show the contours of a whole new model. Now, if you want to understand what you're about and what you're doing, I think that you need to go back a few hundred years. And I'm going to go to 90,000 feet here for a minute. Hundreds of years ago, all around the world, we had agrarian societies, and the means of production and political system was called feudalism. And knowledge was tightly concentrated in tiny oligopolies. People didn't know about things. There was no concept of progress. You were born and you lived and you died. But when Gutenberg came up with this great invention, over time people had knowledge, and the institutions of feudal agrarian society appeared to be stalled or frozen or in atrophy or failing. It didn't make sense for the church to be responsible for medicine. It didn't make sense for a bunch of kings and nobles to be running everything. I was in Latin America a couple of weeks ago. It didn't make sense to be in Colombia or Brazil, where I was, and have some feudal empires basically making decisions. So we saw the rise of the national democratic revolutions in Latin America, the rise of parliamentary democracy, the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther called the printing press God's highest act of grace. We saw the creation of the university, the corporation, science, and it was all good. And the Industrial Revolution was a wonderful thing because it advanced the standard of living globally. But it came with a cost. And now, once again, the technology genie is out of the bottle. But this time it's very different. See, the printing press gave us access to the written word. The internet enables each of us to be a publisher. The printing press gave us access to recorded knowledge. The internet gave us access to the knowledge contained in the crania of other people on a global basis. You know what? This is not an information age. It's an age of networked intelligence where we can connect our minds. Now, this affects the topic today quite profoundly, because if you want to save the atmosphere, there's a new mode of production and a new technology infrastructure that enables us to build a new industrialization. But there's also a new communication medium that enables us to organize to do this. And that's why TAF is so important and why I agreed to be here today. We have a new communications medium. We have a demographic revolution. the first generation of digital natives. I'm a digital immigrant. I had to learn the language. Who here has kids or grandchildren under the age of 33? Hands, please. Okay. Who here is under the age of 33? Hands? Okay. So all of you people who put up your hand, you know what I'm talking about. I started studying kids as a generation when I noticed how my own children were effortlessly able to use all this sophisticated technology. At first I thought my children are prodigies. But then I noticed all their friends were like that, so that was a bad theory. We have a social revolution. We have 600 million people on Facebook, 200 million on Twitter. And we have an economic revolution, a change to the deep structure and architecture of the corporation. We create wealth through networks now, not through vertically integrated companies. We also have a convulsive shock to the global system, the global financial meltdown, and it's causing us to dig deep and to rethink every institution in society. What an unbelievable time to be alive. This is a time of unbelievable peril, but most of great opportunity. Now, Julia mentioned 5 principles, and you'll read about these in the book, and I'm not going to give you a big lecture on that. But we can now embrace collaboration. I'm not talking about a bunch of people sitting together in a meeting. I'm talking about collaboration that can occur on an astronomical scale. You know, the Linux operating system was created by thousands of programmers. Nobody owns it. It's a dominant operating platform in the world for computers. And Linux has some big customers like China. Imagine you're the salesperson on the China account. Hey boss, we just got a great new customer, China. There's a lot of people, big market. Openness. Every institution, especially corporations, are going to be naked. Thank you. And if you're going to be naked, fitness is no longer optional, you know? Or if you're going to be naked, you better be buff. Meaning you need to have good value, but you also need to have values as part of your DNA. Companies are having to be good, not because of regulation, but because people can find out what kind of company you're at. Sharing intellectual property. Interdependence. I mean, if there's one thing this whole financial meltdown should tell us, it's that business can't succeed in a world that's failing. And integrity, having the principles of honesty, consideration, accountability, abiding by your commitments as part of your bones, your corporate bones. So I'd like to end just by talking about a couple of these are chapters of the book, a couple of them. Let's start with the energy platform. You know, if Alexander Graham Bell came alive today and he looked at the phone network, he wouldn't recognize a damn thing. What are all these things? They don't have wires, you know, and they have all these pictures on them and everything. If Thomas Edison came back today, he'd look around at the power grid and he'd say, yeah, all right, I recognize that, baby. That's my power grid. We have this old industrial age power grid. It's centralized, it's dumb, and it's helping to destroy the planet. How do we move towards something new? Well, for starters, we need an open source energy grid where there's intelligence that's built into the network, like with the phone network. And we also need to have applications running on this energy grid. And we need power distributed with all kinds of new sources of power. And they include fuel cells. TAF's initiatives in this area are great, you know? Fleet-wise, Lightsavers, Solar City, Tower-wise, I think TAF is very wise. It's positioning itself not in an ideological way, but in a very practical way to the city, because politicians come and go, but this issue remains. And TAF is saying, look, this makes sense. We need to reduce energy costs, and we could do that, and that's a big benefit. You know, Carbon Rally now brings together people to be able to track your actual use of carbon. We've got games now, like this one, that enable young people and others to come online and to experience the whole question of climate change through a video game. And of course, young people relate to that terrifically. Is Ron Dembo here by any chance? No. Zero Footprint, great example as well. Helping you measure, compare, and make modifications to the kind of power that you use. Talking plug or smart plugs. You stick them in the wall, and in your home, all of a sudden you can understand your energy use. We've got stuff like Climate Spark. What a great initiative from TAF. Does everyone know about, those who know about this, would you put up your hand? This is unbelievable. They held a challenge, and they asked Toronto and the world to come up with great ideas and great innovations that would help us reduce carbon emission. They got all kinds of them. $10,000 in prizes to create millions of dollars in value. And the winners were extraordinary companies and their mission was advanced by using a new communication medium to harness the power of mass collaboration and to enable people to participate and to self-organize around this issue. The Alliance for Climate Protection, Al Gore initiated this, involves millions of people now using the internet to organize around this question. The British Columbia government's been a real leader on this question. They held a challenge called Apps for Climate Change. And what they did is they decided, and the Ontario government's about to announce something similar, that we're going to open up our data. We want to become an open government. And the BC government said, we're going to give you, the world, every bit of data that we have about carbon. And we got a lot. And we challenged the software industry to come up with apps that can use this data to do something helpful. 27 amazing apps were created for tiny prize money that was given by the private sector. And one of the ones that I saw, from your mobile device, you can look real time at the carbon emissions happening in your company. You turn off the lights in an office building, the carbon goes down. This is about how to orchestrate capability to create public value differently. And that's what social innovation is. I'm talking to Tanya from the Center of Social Innovation at this cocktail party, and I asked her to define social innovation. She essentially said, it's the application of new ideas to create public value. What an amazing thing the BC government did. We need governments all across Canada to be doing this. Financial Times, private sector organizations are getting into this, harnessing the wisdom of crowds, mass collaboration, digital brainstorms, challenges. The Ontario government just launched a wiki to create a social innovation policy. Tread lightly. Actually, I think this is a video, and it's 1 minute long, so let's see if it'll work, and we'll watch it.